G'day everyone, welcome back to another weekly tipping video on the channel. Going to be doing my tips for round 9 of the 2024 AFL season. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do go on to enjoy. And as always, let's start off with how I went last week. Okay, so my tips from round 8, and I'd say I had a pretty decent round, got myself a 6 out of 9. It was very up and down, especially at the start of the round. I had a flyer to kick off round 8 with tipping the Crows correct in the showdown. Went with the Pies, felt like they could get the win over the Blues, and how about that goal from Nick Daicos. Backed in my Swannies over the Giants and the Saints over North Melbourne, so it's starting off 4 from 4 on an absolute roll, and then I did go with Geelong, but how about that from Melbourne? Defensively were superb, and yeah, I was going to pay the price of this one. Going the risky tip with West Coast, almost did pay off, but yeah, Essendon probably should have won this game by more. They were wasteful with their chances, but still a really resilient win from them. And then the Sunday games, Fremantle backed them in, just better team on paper. Richmond gave them a bit of a scare in the third term, but they were too good. The Bulldogs, I wasn't really expecting that from the Hawks, to be honest, but they really showed why they can still be a competitive team. Knocking off the Bulldogs in that fashion. And then the Brisbane Lions just over the Suns. Just couldn't trust tipping Gold Coast with this game. Lions always seem to do the job over the Suns in the Q clash. So 6 out of 9 for round 8. Okay, let's now have a quick look at my tipping competition leaderboard update. Having a scan through, nobody did get themselves a full 9 out of 9 score. A couple of people did get 8, so credit to those. But as for who is leading the comp, it still is Magpies FX maintaining the top spot with a total score of 75. Okay everyone, now let's start off with my tips for round 9. Thursday night footy, we start off with Carlton and Melbourne at the MCG. The last couple of times the Blues have definitely gotten the wood over the Ds. They've started off games as not being the favourites. Pretty sure, yeah, the semi-final they were the outsiders, and also that game a few weeks prior, and they managed to knock off the Ds in both of those games. So now the scenario is a little bit more different with Melbourne heading into this game as being the favourites, because when looking at both sides, the Blues, the last few weeks, they have definitely looked quite off a bit. They have now dropped 2 of their last 3, and when watching them play, definitely their biggest issues at the moment is the lack of their defensive depth showing. With no Sidor, no McGovern, Zach Williams was just getting killed alive by Jamie Elliott last week. They are struggling, I think, to defend ball movement and a lot of their inside 50s, and their game at the moment is very long and direct, and I think this has always been a bit of an issue where Carlton get into bad habits. They just bomb it down the line. They need to rely on contested marks from 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿𝐿𝐿 and 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿𝐿𝐿 and 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐿𝐿, and they just can't get the ball forward. They had no run, and the Pies were able to run over the top of them off the turnover, and Melbourne are definitely capable of doing that too. Their win over Geelong was fantastic last week. Defensively so strong. Lever and May were at their best, playing behind the football so well. So I think if the Blues do want to pinch this one, they've got to try and really win that contest battle over Melbourne. I wouldn't say Petrarca and Oliver are absolutely 100% going at the moment, but it's also important really for the 2-ruck system of Pitnet and also De Koning to try and really run over the top of Gawn too, because he's just being a match winner for Melbourne at the moment. But where I just look at the issues for Carlton is that long and direct ball movement. If they just have a very predictable use going forward, you can just see Lever and May picking them off all night long. So they've got to get more service from their smalls. Cripps and Walsh really have to get going, but I just think Melbourne, they're going a bit better at the moment. They're moving the football better too, and they're just defensively set up behind the football really well. This could be a game where I think Melbourne could just out-coach the Blues. So yeah, I'm going to be going with the Demons in this tip. But the Blues, they've won the past few games over them. I can definitely see that and see them bounce back. But for me, Melbourne, just that better drilled side at the moment. So I'll back in Melbourne to win this game by 13 points. For Friday night football now, we do have 2 games here. The first one up, we have the Cats hosting Port Adelaide at 𝐓𝐿𝐼𝐴 Stadium. That just match last week against the Crows was absolutely awful. Inaccuracy really did hurt them. They were sort of similar to what I said about Carlton in the previous tip, just very predictable ball movement. They're not really getting much service in the air either. You know, they might get the odd contested mark from Charlie Dixon here or there, but Todd Marshall and Geordie, I thought their presentation forward of the ball was very disappointing. And when you look at Geelong's team defence, you just think they'll be picking off those balls all day long, especially with the likes of Tom Stewart. They are going to be without Connor Rozee this week, so Port Adelaide need to get on top of this Geelong midfield, and they are also a top territory side. They love to get repeated entries, and when they have lost games, they have won inside 50 counts most of the time. So if they're able to really win that territory game, I'll give them a chance here against the Cats, but very tough side to beat over there at the Category Geelong. The Hetfield is at home this year. Down there at 𝐓𝐡𝐿𝐵, they're just the better, I think, drilled side at the moment. Really well set up behind the football. Really well balanced side too. And for me, Port Adelaide without Rosie, their forward line bit of a mess. Look, this could definitely be the bounce back week where they kick more accurately, but I just back in Geelong, the better side going at the moment. So the Cats to win this one, knock off Port Adelaide. I think the pair will make this close. I still want to treat them as a top team. They're a good quality side, but at the moment, I just think forward of the ball, they are having their issues. So I'm going to be going with the Cats in this one to be the more accurate side and knock over the pair by 12 points. Then roughly 90 minutes later, we head over west to see the Dockers take on the Swans at Optus Stadium. A massive opportunity for both sides. If the Swans can win this one, they maintain their top spot on the ladder. But as for the Dockers, if they're able to win this one, they are definitely a chance to be in the four at the round's end. Sydney generally do play in Perth quite well though. The last two meetings between two of these sides at Optus, the Swans have been able to win quite well and quite professionally against the Dockers. I think what I've really liked with Fremantle the past few weeks is I'm enjoying a bit more of their ball movement. They're starting to take it through the corridor a lot more, get a lot more of that forward hand pass game going, and defensively behind the footy. Pearce is in great form one-on-one, and Luke Ryan has been distributing the ball and playing in sort of that general behind the footy really well. They do have plenty of rebound. Their midfield is humming at the moment. And forward of centre, they've got a lot of marking options like Joice and for sure Josh Tracy, who I'm loving this season. He has been playing some good football. But how do they fare against the Swans here? Well, I think at the moment, Sydney's looking like a hard team to knock off, it must be said. But if Fremantle can try and bring that forward pressure, like they were able to against Brisbane back in round one, win that tackle count, force turnovers and don't allow Sydney to move the ball easily through the uncontested marking style they do like to play, the Swans, then definitely this could be a game where Fremantle can win. But for me at the moment, the Swans are they're just flying at the moment. The last couple of games, I like to keep, level-headed as a Sydney supporter. And I think Fremantle, great opportunity to get this win here. But I think when you look at the Swans, their contest game's in great check at the moment. Their ball movement is looking very good as well. They're picking apart their options very nicely forward to centre. And they're currently one of the most damaging teams off turnover and also off stoppage too. So I think Sydney can do a job here over the Dockers, head over to Perth and get it done over, a Fremantle side where I think they'll come to play and definitely do the homework on Sydney. Jocelyn Longmuir, obviously tactically a good coach, but I think the Swans will be too good for the Dockers here and win this game by 16 points. Saturday games now. First one is upon us. Hawthorn hosting the Saints down there at Tassie. So this is usually a bit of a happy hunting ground for the Hawks. They do like to play some good footy over here. And we all know the past records between these two sides. The Hawks were able to get that unlikely win over St Kilda last year. And it's a great chance to do the same for the Hawks. A very resilient win last week. There's definitely going to be questions on how they go forward of centre with Gunston out of form and Nomad 𝐼𝐿𝐴. But how about that? 𝐸𝐴 𝐎𝐺𝐸. What a story, how he got into the league, of course, and had a great debut. His overhead marking was fantastic. Heading into this one, the midfield battle is definitely going to be an intriguing one. The Saints midfield collectively has been off the past month or so, and for Hawthorn, what they were able to do and win that ground level game against the Bulldogs, I'll definitely give them a chock full of confidence. Though their ball movement has been very up and down, the Saints pretty much the whole season long. What I can't deny about them is definitely their running power. They still love to transition the ball as best as they can and get a lot of show really high work rate when moving it in attack and also defence. They'll definitely get some plays back in for sure. I've heard Dowell and Hunter Clark are chances to come back. They'll also get back in Liam Henry too, which is a player at the start of the season that did show a lot of X factor for the Saints. So there's definitely a world where Hawthorn can potentially make it 2 in a row. It was a really, really good quality win over the Bulldogs. Also with 𝐶𝐶 going down and coming back on. Going forward, he was awesome too. But I think the Saints, if they're serious about this one, they should find a way to beat Hawthorn here. Just like them as that side. A bit better on paper. So we'll back in the Saints here over the Hawks. And I think this one could be close. I'm sensing Hawthorn could really potentially make it 2-0. But the Saints will be too good in the end and pick them in a close one by 8 points. Then we move to Marvel Stadium to see Essendon take on the GWS Giants at Marvel Stadium. The Giants were definitely hurt without Tom Green last week. With his early absence out of the game, they did struggle in the midfield against the Swans and just got outdone, I think, with class. And they just didn't play to the conditions very well compared to Sydney. And then I was looking at Essendon, a really resilient win last week against West Coast. And this is what I did say in my tipping video the previous week. I didn't tip the Bombers, but what I'm really liking about Essendon is they're just looking mentally a much better side on and off the field. And this has always been an issue when looking at Essendon, and it has reflected their performances. They've never really been able to show consistency, but now looking at the last 4 games, I thought they really should have beaten Collingwood. Let's say they'd be sitting at the moment 4 wins in a row. Their midfield work, and especially Zach Merritt, I think he's the best captain in the competition at the moment. They're getting great leadership. Everybody's playing their part at the moment too. Yes, they were a little bit inaccurate and they didn't take much of the most of their opportunities last week, but they'll definitely need to do that against GWS. They're a side that can definitely make you pay. That ball movement can cut up pretty much any team in the competition. And they smashed Sydney, I think, in marks inside 50 the previous week too. So under the dry deck at Marvel Stadium, this is an area where GWS could really put on a big score. I have heard Tom Green is a test to play this week, and also I'm pretty sure 𝐼𝐴 is going to come back into the side, which is just absolute necessity to try and win this midfield battle over Essendon, because they are flying, their midfielders at the moment, must be said. So just looking at those weapons, I really like GWS just coming out of that back half and putting on a big score against Essendon. But I just think under the lid at Marvel Stadium, at their playpen, Essendon can really turn it up a gear, and I'm feeling a bit of an upset here. So I don't know, I just feel like that midfield could really get on top, and they've got weapons forward of centre too. Jake Stringer, Peter Wright, Kyle Langford. I think the Bombers can get the win here over GWS, and I reckon they'll hand GWS their 2nd loss in a row. But there's definitely I can just see GWS just cut them apart with ball movement, and Green and 𝐼𝐴 are back in there. They should be able to get it done. But Essendon, I'm just liking at home. So the Bombers to knock off the Giants here and run over the top of them and win by 15 points. Saturday night games now. First one up, we've got the Tigers hosting the Bulldogs at the MCG. As I always do say, Richmond will continue to be competitive for sure, even with the injury-raveled team they are. They gave Fremantle a bit of a scare in the 3rd term, but they'll just cut up with ball movement. They had an inability to defend transition, and defensively they were just a hot mess, which is a bit of a disappointment, because I feel like they've been pressure-wise and manning up-wise a lot better than what I did see last week. So it's a good opportunity against the Bulldogs to lick their wins and bounce back in that sort of area, or that sort of facet of the game. They're a bit vulnerable too at the moment, the Doggies. Their midfield has been a bit ordinary as of late. It felt like it was just 𝐓𝐴 or bust in that game against Hawthorn last week. He was just carrying the team on his back once again. It's hard to get a gauge on those Bulldogs. One week they are also moving the footy, and they'll get so many goals to Aaron Naughton and 𝐼𝐴 𝐼𝐻𝐾𝐬. Without Waitman, though, is hurting them. But then the next week, like we saw the previous week against Hawthorn, they are just defensively a hot mess. Had a lot of unforced turnovers. Their defensive transition was so poor. So these are areas where Richmond really do like to move the footy and move it fast. At the MCG, they play their best here. Good chance for Richmond to make, a cheeky upset here over the Bulldogs, but it is hard to tip the Tigers at the moment, just with the injuries they do have, and the Bulldogs, just the talent they have on that team. They should find a way to get it done here over the Tigers, and just because they're so hot and cold, this is probably the week where they do have a game like they did against St Kilda. They just go firing on all cylinders, forward of centre, and I think they just should be too strong for Richmond here, so the Bulldogs will be too good. So the Doggies will kick a high score and knock off the Tigers here by 19 points. And the other Saturday night game here, we have Gold Coast taking on the Kangaroos up there at TIO Stadium. Shouldn't really take too long with this tip here. Not only is North Melbourne yet to pick up their first win of the season. Now, I don't think they will go winless. They'll eventually pick up a win here or there. You'd think one of those wins would come probably at home at Marvel Stadium, because when you look at this, the Suns haven't lost at Darwin for quite some time. They play the 2 games in a row every single year, and before the bye, they always pick up those 2 wins, and they've been able to do it against some more quality opposition. So Gold Coast, they play the conditions really well up there, the hot and humid style. The dew would definitely help their midfield too, like Real and 𝐼𝐴 and etc. and Anderson. There's just hard to see much positives here for the Kangaroos. Maybe if they could B, try and take the game on a little bit more with their ball movement. They just get killed off turnover. Yeah, they're just unable to play consistent four-quarter efforts. The Suns should be too good here over the Kangas and win this one well by 33 points. Just the two Sunday games here. First one, we've got Collingwood hosting the Eagles at Marvel Stadium. Now, it must be said, West Coast always seem to give Collingwood a bit of a challenge. Even in last year's game over in Perth, I think the Eagles were able to get within a kick or something against the Pies. But yeah, obviously, last year Collingwood were a very, very strong team and were able to win professionally in the end. And now they're getting a bit of their premiership profile back, and I have been saying this as of late. The Pies are looking much better. That's why I did back them in against Carlton, and have a look at it. They're sort of playing like the Pies from last year. Their pressure has been magnificent. They're now playing with a lot more confidence, moving the football forward to centre. When they break free of congestion, they get numbers floating forward too. But geez, there's a bit of carnage for both teams though. West Coast are definitely going to be without Jake Waterman and 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿. Those are the players I can think off the top of my head. And as for Collingwood, they're without 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿, they're without 𝗏𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐿 still, they're without Mitchell still. So yeah, a few injury outs for both teams for sure. They'll be competitive in this game. I definitely feel West Coast at their best this season. They've been very good in the midfield. In fact, they've been able to win centre clearances against some good quality sides this year. Against Port Adelaide, I'm pretty sure, and also against the Swans. So, hey, if they can do a number on those Pies midfielders, though, I still think 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿 is going to be a bit of an out for them because he's been key to their centre clearance work. Yeah, West Coast could maybe lead potentially for a quarter, who knows, and maybe make this one close. But, you know, we all know Collingwood is a very well-balanced team, and I just think under the lid at Marvel, they should be too good here for West Coast. So they'll be competitive, the Eagles, but the outs of Waterman and 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿, they're probably their two most important players at the moment, I'd say, in terms of impact. They're out of this game, so I think the Pies should do a number here on the Eagles and run over the top and win this one by 4 goals, 24 points. And the final game of the round is an interesting one here. The Adelaide Crows hosting the Brisbane Lions at the Adelaide Oval. Crows finally were able to get their very first win at home over Port Adelaide, and now do they start to get the ball rolling. They're playing with a lot more confidence the last few weeks. Their numbers from last year are starting to show in the last few weeks too. They're becoming more efficient of a forward line. Their ball movement has shown a lot more confidence. So this is a great opportunity to knock off a Brisbane Lions side who has been vulnerable this year. Defensively, behind the football, they've had their issues. They've shown an inability to punish off turnover and also clearance the Lions too. So looking at this matchup, I just think it's one of those classic ones where if this was a Brisbane home game, you give the edge to Brisbane, but considering this one is at home for the Crows, well, I think you definitely do give Adelaide the edge here, especially with how they have been playing as of late. Their midfield mix, I think they have gotten a really on down pat too. 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐿𝐿 is now more in there, and he was best on ground, of course, last week, had himself a blinder. But I just think ultimately, still with the talent Brisbane have, they are going to be without a couple of players though. Gardner and McCarthy are probably down with suspected ACLs, and also Noah Ainsworth is going to be out with concussion, so their depth is going to take a bit of a hit. But just as a whole, like, their midfield work was fantastic against Gold Coast last week. They nullified and shut down their midfielders, and if maybe Josh Dunkley is able to do a job on like a Rory Laird or a Dawson, not allow them to win plenty of clearance, well, yeah, Brisbane, they have been hot and cold, but when they have been at their best, they move the ball really well. They're able to get a lot of points off turnover and really get that game going, but it's just inconsistencies with them, Brisbane, and I think I'm going to be giving the edge here over the Crows, just with how they're going as of late. So I'll tip Adelaide here in a game that could really go either way. If Brisbane can bring their best, if they can win this game, this will really kickstart their season, you'd think. But just with that home field advantage, I think Adelaide will be, in the end, too good over the Lions, and they'll pip them at the end and win this one by a close one, 10 points. So everyone, there is my tips for round 9 of the 2024 AFL season. A pretty interesting round coming up, so let me know what you are going to be tipping down below in the comments. Love to hear your people's thoughts on the upcoming round. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did go on to enjoy. And until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.